Hey Clashes, what are the top 5 strategies right now in the game? Because the February update changed quite a few things. And what equipment should you bring for every single strategy? Because different equipment are helping different strategies. While the same goes with the pets. Some pets are empowering your heroes even better than others. And as well, what are the armies actually looking like? The army links are always down below the description. But let's start things off with the number 5 position, and that is the Warden charge with Rocket Loons. This strategy is back because of the new healer level. Well, let's not really call it back because it was always at the top, but it's now a bit easier because the Warden is less likely to go down because the healer level actually made sure that healing on heroes is improved a little bit. And that's the only reason why sometimes this strategy is not considered a top 5 strategy. Because for my rankings, I'm considering 2 things. The strength of the strategy, and the second thing is how difficult is it actually to execute the strategy. So for example, in the past, Lava Loon was always the number 1 strategy for all of the pros. Well, for casuals, it was impossible to play that strategy because it was so difficult to execute it. Well, this strategy is kind of the new Lava Loon, where it's really hard to execute, power score 10 out of 10, but the difficulty is not easy. And as well, something which I will highly recommend if you want to pick this strategy up is to find your own style. I have now already showcased to you in like what possible equipments and pets to bring, but you can see already with Vampire bringing his own different troops. Why is he doing that? Because as I just said, this strategy is so flexible that everyone can really bring their own components. The only things which is like everyone is doing it is first, you have a Warden charge. Second, well, you have Rocket Loons for cleanup, and everything around that is pretty much up to you. For example, Vampire likes to bring like a Yeti. This Yeti is mostly used to support the Siege Machine, the Flame Flinger, which is and should be used in most of your attacks. You can use this as well as final option. Well, in the armory which I showed you in the beginning, I'm using a Giant for that, which is a bit cheaper, but obviously as well less safe. So you really need to find your way of what should you actually bring to the attack and what fits your personal playstyle. And this is really what this strategy embodies, because it is just, you can do so many things. As well, the approaches to bases is really up to you. Some people prefer to really get into the core and then use the fireball. Some people like to use the fireball to even push the Warden to the right direction. And another thing is as well the pet on the Warden. Well, you can use the Angry Jelly, which most people tend to do, because it really makes sure that time is a less bigger factor, because you're going right into the base. You can deploy cleanup already behind the Warden with like minions, and time is less a really small factor then. But if you're using the Angry Jelly, you're getting into the action really quick. And this sometimes gives you problems maybe with the perfect fireball, because it's not as easy to really place the fireball then into the core, with the Warden always diving further inside the base. This is, I guess, why Vampire likes to bring the Owl as well. Why I like to use the Owl personally as well better, because it's, you're getting like not as fast into the action, but at the same time, it's more controlled. At least that's what my experience is. But again, as I just said, there's many options how you can play this, and this is why it makes it so hard to really rank this strategy. Because as I just said, if you have figured out how to get the multitasking right, because this is what this strategy is all about, multitasking of the Warden charge, of the heroes, of the Rocket Loons, everything at the same time, that is a really big challenge. But if you can pull this off and you were able to figure out, okay, I want to bring maybe 1 wall break, maybe 2, maybe 3 wall breaks because I dive further into the base, then you have really good chances of 3-starring every single base. The next one is with Super Witches. The Super Witches is like going and dropping a little bit lower. The main reason is the base meta right now in the game. Well, for pros, we see a lot of Rage Towers, and this is why so many people are using the Fireball, and especially the Super Witches in tournaments. But if you're going with Poison Towers, for example, it's less likely that you have those stacked areas and the Fireball is having less value. This is what we have currently in the normal game. So this is why the strategy is like falling a little bit on the number 4 spot, which is just because of the meta overall, not because the strategy is weaker. No, by any means, this strategy is still incredibly strong. It has the power score, in my opinion, a little bit less than what the Rocket Loon strategy has, maybe like an 8 out of 10 if the Rocket Loons is 10 out of 10, but how difficult to execute this strategy is just like way easier compared to like a Rocket Loon attack. As well, for this strategy, you have now the new Siege Machine, because whenever you're doing smash attacks, this can be with Root Riders, this can be with Super Witches, after a Fireball attack, you do not have any protection for your healers. And this is a really big problem. Black mines inside the core, red mines inside the core, all of the splash damage with multi-infernal towers, with the town hall, everything. The healers are really likely to go down. But this new siege is kind of fixing this problem, at least when it comes down to air traps. This is why a lot of people are now removing the siege barracks from the support of the queen and instead bringing the new siege machine. They're adding like 1 minion, you can use 4 loons, 1 ice golem, and then 1 yeti, for example, in there to have like 4 test loons which you can like flinger into the base and make sure that all of those healers are staying safe. This is obviously a massive improvement for this strategy, with having less to worry about your healers and they're more likely to stay alive. As well, for the Barbarian King, there's different options when it comes down to the equipment. One option is going with a gauntlet. That's something which I like a lot because I just like this beefy tank in front of my, which is to make sure that she's like they're staying alive for as long as possible. But as well, you can go with the full damage one, which is then Earthquake Boots and the Spiky Ball. That's personal preference. And again, this is really what I'm trying to like show you in this video, that there's not always this one way of playing all of the strategies. No, there's many ways of playing the strategies. Even with the same troops, you can have different approaches, and this is the beauty of those different strategies, to really make sure that you are converting it into something which you can execute and as well you like to play in the game. Super Witches in general are a cool troop and are really powerful, especially with the Fireball to set them up, and with the new siege it is going to look even stronger. Obviously siege barracks is still fine. I just hope that your healers are staying safe, because otherwise your witches will go down eventually, and that is never a good thing. With that being said, we have covered now the number 5 and the number 4 spot. With that, we're going into the top 3 rankings right now. And I mean, is it a big surprise? No, but it's not, right? It's not. We're talking about the Root Riders. They're on number 3 already, but without a Royal Champion charge. Just pretty classic mass Root Riders. They're incredibly strong. And right now, as far as I know, the record for like the impossible streak, or like the perfect season, I think someone with mass Root Riders had like only 2 fails over the entire season, which is mind-blowing. As well, for this one, you can maybe see already, I have different pets in this attack as I was just showcasing. Again, I want to showcase how many different options you have of playing those strategies. Some people like to bring, and that's as well my personal preference, like to bring for the Queen the Frosty, and then for the Warden the Diggy. But you can use as well some more extra protection on the Queen with the Unicorn, and then just use the Frosty instead on the Warden, for example. So there's overall many different options you can go for when it comes into those different strategies. But one thing is always the same. You have the corners funneled, which means from the Queen, you can combine the King with her, for example, with the Spiky Ball. And then you have as well another corner funneled with the Siege Barracks and the Royal Champion in the mix as well. And why do you need now Overgrowth spell? The main reason why you're bringing Overgrowth spell in this army is because you want to manipulate the pathing of the Root Riders. And this is something which you need to do because you had no Fireball in the beginning. You had no, for example, I don't know, like a Royal Champion charge. So that's the important thing why you're bringing that spell. Moving forward, we're coming to the Dragons with a mass Invis Royal Champion charge. Yes, they are back. To be honest, I knew that the Electro Boot nerf was a bad joke and would not change much, but it was even more stupid than I thought, to be honest. Like, the change, you literally don't feel any change whatsoever. And this is why they're now back on the number 2 spot. It kind of feels like back with Druids, where you could combine anything with them and it would just work. But those two, the number 1 and the number 2, big spoiler, will be with the Royal Champion charge. You have a couple of options here. First one, you can go with the Fox, with the Haste Vial, and with the Electro Boots, which is my personal favorite, because this as well means that you can bring the King or the Minion Prince with the Phoenix, which is then way stronger in my opinion. But if you want to go the lazy way, which is the way easier way, do it like what I'm doing right now, and just bring the Phoenix on the Royal Champion. Why is it easier? Well, the main reason why this is way easier is because you just need to counter 4. With the Fox, you need to actually hit the timings to turn the Fox invisible after the own invisibility of the Fox, then again the Fox invisibility, then you always have those two in between. And if you're not as good with the timings, then your Fox is dying quite early and is having no value. But if you get the timings right, it is way stronger but harder to execute. The Phoenix on the other side is just easier and guaranteed value. At the end of the day, it's up to you. And with using the Phoenix on the Royal Champion, then obviously you have to bring the Angry Jelly on the Minion Prince, or for example the Frosty, or for example the Yak, or any other pet on the King then, because you don't have the Phoenix anymore. Just to keep that in mind when you're like deciding whatever you want to go with. After a mass invis Royal Champion charge, dragons are just the best thing to do because they're somewhat quick, and I feel like they're not taking as long and they're not as slow as, for example, Root Riders. As well, Root Riders are not dealing as much damage, which means having the Royal Champion then behind the Root Riders is a crucial thing for their success. And that's why dragons with a mass invis just tends to work way better than like most of the ground armies. For this one, you just have the Royal Champion work for like 1.5 minutes or something, then have the dragons in, and then have the 3-star. As simple as that. I know people will freak out again, but I'm saying it, and I feel like if everyone is honest, you know that it's true. But Electro Boots need another nerf. It is just, the change was not really, like, you didn't even feel it. I mean, that was just crazy. The DPS should just go down that you cannot charge half the base. Well, for example, then other attacks where you're using the Electro Boots not in a charge way are not really getting affected much because the damage is mostly to take down like skeletons and a little bit of bonus DPS. But having like the DPS as an aura is not the main deal of the equipment for most of the other strategies. Well, for Royal Champion charges, this is the name of the game. You want to have as much damage to make sure that you're taking as much down off the base. And this is why I suggest another DPS nerf for the Electro Boots. I know people won't like it, but if you're honest, you know that is actually needed. The number 1 spot has not really much changed over the last couple of months since the Electro Boots were added. It is the Royal Champion charge with the recall and then the Root Riders. There's a couple of options now, obviously. You can use it with the Haste Vial, then you should go for no overgrowth and with the Minion Prince. If you're going for the Hog Rider Puppet with the Electro Boots, works totally fine as well, then you should bring in Overgrowth and you should probably bring the Barbarian King instead because then you're going more for pathing. So this is really up to you, but why is this difference here and why is it so dependent on the Royal Champion? The answer is pretty easy, and we're talking again about the pathing and about the funneling and pushing our troops into the right direction. We have talked about that already with the mass Root Rider attack where you pretty much have no pathing setup overall, and that's why you have to bring the Overgrowth spell. But if you're having the Haste Vial, like I'm doing right now, you're pretty easily and quickly taking down a huge part of the base and creating that needed pathing. Which means you don't need the Overgrowth anymore to create the pathing because that's what the Royal Champ already did because she has more attack speed, more DPS, and obviously as well the Haste Vial active ability on top. So she can take down a huge part of the base. Or on the other side, if you're going with the Electro Boots and then, for example, the, well, Hog Rider Puppet, then you have the downside of you're not being as quick through the specific part of the village, but you have the extra protection then later on in the attack. This is really coming down to a preference of like you're going the safety option with the Royal Champ or you're just going with the power option of the Royal Champ with the Haste Vial. Again, this is then where it's coming down to because you have created better pathing and a bigger area was cleared with that Haste Vial, so you don't need the Overgrowth for the pathing anymore. Well, if you have cleared less of the base with the Hog Rider Puppet because you have less DPS, less attack speed, you have no active ability in the beginning pretty much, well, then you have to go with the Overgrowth to make sure that your troops are actually sticking together. This is why there is the difference there. Since I personally am a huge fan, and I mean, people know it by now, I'm a huge fan of the Minion Prince. This is why I'm going as well with that option. But as well, not everyone is having the Minion Prince even close to max, and level 80 is already completely fine to use, but understand that people are upgrading it currently, so they can't really use it in army. So don't worry, you can just use it with the Barbarian King, and I have videos on the channel as well, where, for example, Mammoth or Hog, the number 1 player, actually uses this army, but with the Barbarian King. Overall, I hope that this video was helpful for maybe picking your future strategy. And whenever there's any changes coming to the game, like balance changes, new level of anything or something, or new equipments in general, you will always see on this channel the newest top 5 strategies whenever it's available. Until then, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys back tomorrow with the next one. Until then, see ya and bye-bye.